Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna Stashkina and today I'm going to teach you how to make wafer paper flowers. This bright red or maroon color, I'm going to use maroon, out of wafer paper. And this tutorial is going to be beginner friendly, so if you never worked with wafer paper or want to learn more about working with wafer paper or just learn how to make these beautiful flowers, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's begin. So we are going to make this beautiful wild rose or abstract flower, and let's talk about materials and things we need for this demonstration. Of course, I'm going to use wafer paper. I have here Saraceno wafer paper. It's 0.27 millimeters thickness, but any wafer paper you have on hand, you should start with that. I will need a floral pot or any soft foam to shape my petals. Also, I'm going to use a petal shaper, and I really like this one. This one is just a drying rack from IKEA that's meant for your dishes, but you can also use even something like this, palettes or any other shapers you like to work with when you're making your sugar flowers. For the tools, you will need a pair of scissors to cut our wafer paper, maybe pliers and wire cutters to work with floral wire. I'm going to use 22 gauge wire in white. This one is paper covered, but you need something for your wafer paper to stick to. White floral tape, a brush, a relatively large synthetic brush, or if you don't want to use the brush or you don't have one on hand, you can use cosmetic sponge. I use this one, so I'll show you how to use just a cosmetic sponge to apply your color. I'm going to use food grade glycerin to make my conditioner, and I'm going to use airbrush color, but any gel color or even powder color will work for that application. And I'm going to make my wafer paper glue or use my wafer paper glue. And basically wafer paper glue, as I call it magic glue, is made out of scraps of wafer paper melted in water, and I usually leave it to sit overnight to bloom. Or if you're in a rush and you want to make your wafer paper glue much faster, you can put it in a microwave in 10-second increments until it's this consistency, so it's gel-like consistency. And I will need a brush to use with my wafer paper glue. The question I get asked a lot: why should you use food grade glycerin to make your wafer paper conditioner? Because in my experience, it helps your wafer paper to stay soft and pliable for a longer period of time. And as you can see, when you're going to assemble your flowers, they will move and they will create space to each other, so you can make a really tight arrangement. And that's the advantage about using wafer paper compared to gum paste, because it stays soft and relatively pliable for a long period of time if you're using glycerin. And can you use vodka or any alcohol? Yes, absolutely you can. It will make your petals dry much faster, but in my experience it makes petals so brittle and so fragile, so it's almost impossible to use when you're working with wafer paper. So my preferred conditioner is using food grade glycerin and mix it with water. So my conditioner is non-alcoholic, so check the description to get more information about my tools, materials and recipe I use for my conditioner. So let's start with making our petals. If you never worked with wafer paper, also known as rice paper, made out of potato starch or rice starch, a little bit of oil and water, and it's just a dehydrated sheet of edible material. It is 100% edible and it's safe to consume, and I believe it's gluten-free and vegan, but you need to check your description, your particular wafer paper. The normal thickness wafer wafer paper is about 0.27 millimeters up to 0.35 millimeters. So one side is this side, as you can see, it's called bumpy side, and the other side called smooth side. Both sides are equal, so you can use the one you prefer. Sometimes, most of the time, I prefer to work on the bumpy side because I love the texture. So let's start with cutting our petals. I do not have any templates because if you're just starting out, you can use any of your cutters. You can use just a basic cutter as a template, but I'm going to cut 3 strips of wafer paper in different sizes to create my petals. And you can absolutely do this free-handed. You don't need to have a template to make a wafer paper flower. The easiest way to cut wafer paper is using a pair of scissors. So I'm going to cut my inner petals maybe up to this side and just cut a basic teardrop shape like this. Next one, the same. So I'm stacking them at the corner and cutting around. We're going to color and shape these petals, so you don't need to be exact. And for the larger one, I will add a little bit of movement like this, just to use as much wafer paper as I can. And don't forget to save your scraps. If you're working with wafer paper, I usually have a bag of wafer paper scraps on hand. So then I will cut it out to smaller pieces and use as a base for my wafer paper glue. And now to color my petals, I'm going to make my wafer paper conditioner. And you can use a small bowl to mix your conditioner. So to make my conditioner, I'm going to use a few drops of glycerin. This is by Wilton. You can buy at any cake supply store, maybe a few drops. An amount of glycerin you use in your wafer paper conditioner depends on your humidity. So if you're living in a very humid climate, you need less glycerin because your wafer paper will absorb moisture from the air and it will stay soft for a long period of time. And if you live in a dry climate like I have today, I have maybe 2 drops of glycerin and maybe half a teaspoon of distilled water. I'm going to mix it together and add my color. To color my petals today, I'm going to use airbrush color by Americolor in shade maroon, but you can use gel color, you can use airbrush color. I just like this color because it gives me enough saturation for my petals to be this bright color. So you can see how dark this color is. You can take a piece of paper towel and you can check your color. So this is going to be my color for my petals. If I want to adjust it, so I want to make it lighter or darker, then I need to add more conditioner, my water and glycerin mixture, or more airbrush color. And first I'll show you how to color your petals using a brush. So you're just taking your wafer paper conditioner on your brush, but make sure that you have enough but not so much moisture so your wafer paper will melt immediately. And then you're just painting on your petal, trying to apply decently moderate amount of moisture but without your wafer paper melting. And then I transfer my petal to a floral pot. So as you can see, wafer paper is stuck to my floral pot, it's not going anywhere. That means that wafer paper is sticky and it's working on absorbing its moisture. And you can do the same using just a makeup sponge. Make sure that you have moisture on your sponge, and then you can color your wafer paper on both sides, just pressing down with your sponge. So I will do the rest and I will show you how to shape these petals. Now I have my petals colored, and if they start to melt and curl like this one, because I didn't attach them to my flower pot, you can use a little bit of cornstarch on a fluffy brush and just gently brush on top to prevent your wafer paper from melting. But usually if you stick your wafer paper petals to your flower pot, they won't melt and then they won't move. But because I want to shape them and I want to add a little bit more movement, I'm going to take my ball tool, apply cornstarch to my petals, turn them upside down. It doesn't matter what side you're working on. I just need to make sure that my wafer paper is not sticky and I can shape it. So for example, these petals are, you can see where we used makeup sponge, the coverage is not so smooth compared to these ones, but it's up to you and it depends on your needs and the way you're going to use your petals. So I'm going to take my ball tool, making sure that my wafer paper is not sticky, and I'm going to apply just a gentle pressure around the petal to shape it a little bit. And the beauty of this flower, so if it melts or if it gets misshapen, it will make your flower look even more realistic and not so paper-like. Like this. So you can see now my petals are not so flat. And then I will put them aside to dry. I will use my petal former, this one I use for my wafer paper. The only suggestion if you're looking for petal former for your wafer paper is use something that is plastic and not cardboard, because cardboard, sometimes wafer paper can stick to cardboard, like you know those apple formers, and I prefer to use plastic, so something like this or something like this to shape my petals. And you can make your petals in advance, let them dry, and then we are going to be ready to assemble our flower. So to make our flower base, I'm going to use 22 gauge wire, cut in half, and I will make a large hook on top, like this. And I'm going to take a piece of floral tape, stretch it, and attach to my wire a little bit below the hook. Bring it up and add just a little bit of thickness to make my flower center. Like this. And because the wafer paper doesn't like to stick to floral tape or floral wire, I will take a little bit small piece of wafer paper, take my wafer paper glue, apply just a small amount of wafer paper glue and attach this to my center. So I'm kind of creating a wafer paper base for my petals to stick. It might not want to stick to itself from the beginning, but you need to be patient and just continue to work, and maybe if you need to add a little bit more glue to form this center. So next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3 of my smallest petals and I will start applying a little bit of wafer paper glue in the middle. And it takes just a few seconds for wafer paper glue to be absorbed by your petals, so it becomes flexible again and you can attach it to your center. So I will start with my smallest petal. Make sure it is stuck to my center. And then second one. In no particular order. We just need to make sure that we're covering our center so it is not visible. You can add a little bit of wafer paper glue in the middle to make sure everything looks beautiful. So now I have my first layer, and you can see it doesn't need to be anything super pretty or specific. You just need to get started with that. If you want this to be even more contained and close, add just a touch of wafer paper glue and shape it the way you want it to. And I will take 3 more petals in a medium size. Again, I'm applying just a touch of wafer paper glue on my right bottom corner because I want to have a little bit of structure to be able to attach this. so it won't melt immediately. But this is going to be my second layer. So I'm attaching one petal here, second one, inserting in between, and third one in between. So you can see I'm forming some sort of a triangle to shape it. And then I'm going to close my petals and bring them together. So this is going to be my second layer. To make my next layer, the more open one, I will take 4 petals. You just need to make sure that your petals are relatively dry and easy to shape. And I'm going to apply a little bit of wafer paper glue only on the bottom part. And you can see my petals are different in shape. I'm not trying to make them perfect. And I'm going to stack them together like this. And my fourth one here in the middle. And then I'm going to leave it to dry, maybe upside down on something like this bottle, because I want to create the movement, but I want my petals to be dry to be able to attach them to a flower. And I will create another layer using the rest of my 5 petals. And it doesn't matter how many petals you're using, you just need to stack them together and let them dry in the shape you want them to be. So for my last layer, I'm going to stack my 5 petals. And because I don't want them to dry this flat, I will take a bowl or another form shaper and I will leave them to dry in this shape. So it depends on your humidity, it might take from 2 to 10 minutes to dry until we can finish and assemble our flower. And now when my petals are dry, you can see they hold its shape for both layers. I can assemble my flower. So to do that, I will attach both layers together and apply just a little bit of wafer paper glue in between. And use my center to assemble the final flower. And you can play around, you can add more or less layers, but you can see it takes no time to make a flower and you can still play around and make it yours. You can apply a little bit of wafer paper glue here and there if you want to play around with your petals. And you just need to let it dry, preferably upside down if you want to, something like this. And then when it will be dry, you can put them together in an arrangement and you will have your beautiful wafer paper flowers in no time. And if you're going to place your wafer paper on fondant cakes or ganache cakes, it doesn't matter, you don't need to do anything specific. If you're afraid about your wafer paper melting from touching your buttercream, what you can do is just to take a little bit of candy melts or cocoa butter and apply on the bottom layer here to cover your flower to protect, to create the protective layer between your buttercream and your wafer paper flower. Thank you so much for watching this week's demonstration. Now you know how to work with wafer paper and make these beautiful flowers. You can make in any color or any shape. You can make them larger or smaller, depends on your needs. So let me know down in the comments below what color would you use to make these flowers and what is your favorite color for making flowers. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. My name is Anna Stashkina and I'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Bye bye.